All right, we are live, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Leslie Kirby, and I'm the chair of the Community Relations Committee of the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. We're delighted to be back after a brief hiatus over our High Holy Day season to do our weekly Lunch and Learns. And today we're honored to have with us Clifton Harris, who's the CEO of the Nashville Urban League. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Clifton. Clifton, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Can you give us, for those who are unfamiliar, a brief overview of Urban League and what you're doing there?
Sure. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you for having me today. The Urban League of Middle Tennessee has been around and serving Middle Tennessee for over 52 years. Our mission is to ensure that African Americans and other people who are disenfranchised and other minority groups have access to economic self-reliance, power, parity, and civil justice. The Urban League nationally has been around since 1910, over 110 years. And a little fun fact and all about the Urban League, most people do not know that the Urban League was actually founded right here in Nashville, Tennessee at Fisk University. So all of the articles of incorporation for the National Urban League is over at Fisk. And we're really excited, that the Urban League got its start here. But in a nutshell, we are about economic self-reliance, economic development, making sure that people have housing. We tie education to workforce and workforce to career exploration, because we simply, believe in a nutshell that if people can see it, if children can see it, they can be it. And so I'm excited, to join you all today to talk about, some of the work that we do. We just finished yesterday our campaign to ensure everyone participated in the 2020 census. As you know, it ended earlier than we had hoped that it would, but we were heavily involved all across the country to ensure that people participated in the census. The Urban League of Middle Tennessee is one of 90 affiliates throughout the United States, in 36 different states. And so we have a host of colleagues and all across the country that is involved in a lot of different initiatives. And so now we are in the throes, of voter engagement, making sure that people submit their absentee ballots, to make sure that they have a plan to vote. And we are also right now doing hot meals for individuals to help individuals, who are experiencing food crisis. And so we have a program called Meals and Masks. So we want people to have hot meals. We want people to mask up, and we want people, to have a plan to vote. So that is some of the work that we got going on right now. We are also involved in helping small businesses develop their capacity, to thrive and be strong in today's economy. And so we in helping businesses, get their PPPs and their idle loans, and now we are providing the technical assistance for those businesses to move from the teetering on insolvency to sovereignty. So we are involved in a host of things, and we serve annually here at the Urban League of Middle Tennessee. We serve about 1,500 people a year throughout Middle Tennessee, and I've been in this now for 4 years, and it is a pleasure to be at the helm and doing the work, that God has called me to do for our beloved community. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of who we are and what we do.
Great. Sounds like there's a lot of overlap in terms of the kinds of services we're trying to provide as well. You said this is your fourth year with the Urban League. What led you to here? So what were you doing prior to that, and what made you shift over to the Urban League?
So prior to that, I had the pleasure of serving two mayors here in Nashville. And after 12 years of my civic duty, I needed a break. And so I had the pleasure of being able to come home and sit on my front porch and have tea and commune with God and through His Word every morning for about 6 months. And then one day I was reading an article on something and saw that the Urban League was in need of a president and CEO, and I answered the call, and 4 months later, I got the job, and so the rest is history. And hopefully, this is my last uh, stint, at running an organization. I also have experience, and I ran Habitat for Humanities in Memphis for 7 years. And I also used to work for Catholic Charities, where I ran 3 long-term residential treatment centers, one for women and children who are victims of domestic violence, one for men and women with alcohol and substance abuse issues, and then one for men and women who are co-occurring disorders, alcohol, substance abuse, and mental health. So I've been in and around this business for a while. So I have a housing background, a community development background, and a social service background. And I'm an ordained minister. And also, that is what kind of drawn me to the work that I do now. And I'm looking forward to the next season in life.
Clifton, you're not even mentioning your work with the homeless.
Yeah, I was.
That's your classic work. That was great work.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of starting Nashville's Homeless Commission. So I spent a lot of time, working with the homeless, and working with all the agencies that touch the homeless to drive down homelessness in Nashville. And that has taken me, across the country. So I know a little bit, about, that issue. And as I tell people, I know a little bit about a whole lot and a whole lot about nothing.
Well,
I think
I think you're on mute, Avi.
Clifton used to run an event at the old municipal convention hall and then at the fairgrounds, where he set up hundreds of tables of giveaways for the homeless, including medical care and personal hygiene and just giveaways. And hundreds of homeless people would come in and get a just treasure trove of goods from Clifton. It was an amazing event.
don't forget the foot washing, Ivy. That was the hit of the day. The foot washing.
Yeah.
That's a very impressive resume. And you've done a lot of things in a lot of different areas. I want to try to focus a little bit on some things that have impacted Nashville this year. So can you talk to us a little bit? We had a double whammy with the tornadoes and then COVID. So how has that impacted the work of the Urban League and the needs that you're seeing in the community?
So with the tornado, we're still working with individuals and homeowners, as it relates, to the tornado, and helping people put their lives and their houses, back together. Where as everyone, as a result of the tornado, started working in immediate response, we chose, to do, long-term recovery efforts. And so we're helping people, with things like putting roofs back on their homes, um, uh, putting windows and doors that were blown out, back in, and helping people put their houses back together and their lives back together. But in the interim, helping them with those things that keep them from losing their jobs, such as prescription medication and gas cards and food, things of that nature, that will help people, make sure, that they can still get to work and be available and ready to work while their homes are being prepared and their lives being put back together. Then along comes, the coronavirus, the pandemic. which was a game changer, as you all know, for everyone. And so we shut down our office, but we continue to launch our services. And so, we do everything from hot meals to right now we're running Thriving Thursday, where we're doing virtual job fairs every Thursday at 12 noon. During the pandemic, we had an apprenticeship program, and people graduated out of a 6-week apprenticeship program with jobs at the airport as electricians and heating and air conditioning, mechanical workers on their way, to becoming journeymen and getting their journeyman's license. We do everything, from how to do a resume, how to do a cover letter, the specifics of that. We are currently, helping inmates, who are getting ready to be released from prison with employment services and where to find jobs and how to fill out what applications to fill out and who are friendly employers, and helping assisting them with getting integrated back into the mainstream of society. Um, Even something as simple as wearing a mask. We have a mask education and campaigns that help people understand and know that the importance of wearing a mask, washing your hands, things of that nature. And so we have not stopped, and we are thankful, that we're in a position where we've been able to get some of the CARES resources to do continue to do. But obviously, we need, those private resources as well to expand what we're doing. And so now we're looking at a pre-apprenticeship program for youth that will introduce them to the grocery industry. I don't know if you all are aware, maybe you are aware of this, but I was not aware of this, but most public managers, make anywhere, from $125,000 to $150,000 a year. And so we're getting ready to partner with Publix and Kroger's, in the retail grocery industry. We're doing some work with Amazon. We are working with Metro General Hospital to ensure people an opportunity, to be trained in the medical profession as certified nursing assistants. We just secured a contract with the Department of Labor to help people gain certification in ITs and get jobs across the state. So I'm really excited about that. That will be a statewide initiative. So Leslie, we have had to be all things in a very short period of time, considering the double whammy, that we've gotten. And I'm just thankful, that by the grace of God, we have some very smart people that has helped us figure out, how to do things virtually as opposed, to the person to person that we all were so comfortable in doing.
An impressive pivot to be dealing with online resources. There's been a lot of attention to small businesses nationwide. Is the Urban League working with African-American small businesses in Nashville? Do you have any initiatives around that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. We actually, we do. So this winter, probably in January, we'll be launching our small business initiative, where we will provide technical assistance to small businesses to help them move from insolvency or teetering on insolvency to solvency by providing technical assistance, in legal support, insurance, accounting, risk management, IT, marketing, communications, that that will help them develop their capacity to do more, because we all know that small businesses are the backbone to our economy. Small businesses employ over 75 5% of our labor force. If we're waiting, then we need to figure out a way to help our small business not only survive but thrive, so that they can impact the economy and the neighborhood economy in a very positive way. So we're doing that, and also I'm in the process of getting certified. We're partnering with a licensed psychologist. This winter we will be launching a program called Equity in Action, which will be a program that will deal with the implicit and the explicit cultural and racial biases in the workplace, to help businesses develop their diversity, arm and inclusion, and take it to a level of equity, with the intentionality of helping people close the wealth gap in America, and that we have right now. So stay tuned. More coming on that. Right now, we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and raising the resources that we need to be more impactful for our small businesses.
Wonderful. Is there still a partnership between Fisk and the Urban League? Or so you said the original incorporation was at Fisk?
Yeah, the original incorporation was at Fisk, and the founder moved to New York and took the whole operation to New York, but the founding papers are still over in the library at Fisk. And the connection right now between Fisk and the Urban League is that we work with Fisk University to help students find employment opportunities, because we have a pretty strong employment initiative for employment.
Great. Do you partner with other organizations like the Equity Alliance and NOAA? Or
Absolutely. It is all about partnership. We can't do these things in silos. We have to join as a coalition. Leslie, I approach it like this. God has placed me into a body as it pleases him. We're all many members, but one body. And so I try and stay in my lane of workforce development. And so I let Ivy deal with the kind of the affordable housing issue as an example, because I simply believe that if we can get people good paying jobs and livable wage jobs, they can solve their housing problems, their daycare problems, their healthcare problems, and their transportation problems. And so by us, working with others, who are good at those things, I think we're able to go a lot farther and do a lot more and have a much bigger and stronger voice.
excellent. So one of the things that we have upcoming is a viewing of the film for the Nashville Jewish Film Festival called Shared Legacies next week.
Mhm.
How do you view, oh, go ahead.
I got my ticket.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. We're hoping to have some dialogue maybe with the Urban League after we show the film. So that would be great. How do you view the partnership between Jewish and African American communities in Nashville?
I think it is a partnership that we need to definitely cultivate even further, because our paths have been similar. We have been the receivers of suppression, and so we know a little bit about that, and I think we both know a little bit of what we're talking about when it comes to that. And so I see a great opportunity to partner together, to be able to share with our community the impact that we can have together in addressing the some of the social ills, the moral ills that exist in our country.
Great. Hopefully we'll be able to build some further interactions and plans around that. One of the things that has been consuming a lot of people in Nashville is the issue of the next police chief. Has the Urban League been involved with the process of selecting the new chief? Or I know a lot of people wanted to be involved who weren't. And broader than that, what do you think the new chief needs to deal with kind of immediately in terms of Nashville specifically?
So yes, we have been involved in that. I'm actually on the mayor's committee, for the policing policy committee. I am serving on the workforce part of that, and from that perspective, I can tell you, that there are a couple things, that the new police chief, is going to have to deal with, regardless of who he or she is, and that is they're going to have to get their own house in order first and foremost. There's some undercurrents and some underlying issues that have been in existence for quite a while, and those are things that cannot be swept under the rug. But in addition to that, you have to be committed to having a police force that truly represents what Nashville looks like. If Nashville's Latino population is 10% of the total population, makes up 10% of the total population, then at least 10% of the police workforce ought to look like the community. African Americans, make up 27% of the total population, and so 27% of the police force, should look like the community that's being served. And right now, those numbers are around 2%, 3%, which is sad, as well as people of color, Black and Indigenous and other people of color need to be into some of the leadership ranks within the police department, because when you have the diversity, then you get diversity of thought. And then we got to do things. He or she is going to have to make sure that we do the types of things that attract people to be police officers. And so we're going to have to increase the pay. We're going to have incentives that helps police officers have a stake in the community. A lot of police officers currently don't live in Davidson County, but yet that's where they work. And so I think we need to reverse some of those trends. So whoever is the new police chief is going to have their hands full, and we are making a set of recommendations that he or she can follow, and I hope they will take them to heart, and work on them, and do the job of getting to know the community, and rebuild the trust that is missing within the community. Those are some of the things that the new police chief is going to have to do.
Another topic that we're hearing a lot about these days is the increase in white nationalist attacks or planned attacks, or is that something that you're concerned about here in Nashville?
It's something that I won't say that I'm overly concerned about, but it is something that I am concerned about. And I thought about this, when I was invited, to come on and to just kind of share my thoughts, around this. And so, so I came up with this, and I'd like to share it with you all, and hopefully you get as much out of it as I have. And that is that there are 4 ways that white supremacy harms white people. 1, government programs help all people. And there's a lot of documented evidence out there, positive evidence that affirms, that, for instance, that affirmative action programs increase diversity group representation in the workplace. And this is a segment of the population that believes that but there's a segment of the population, I should say, that believes that these programs, were designed to increase equity and actually, form a fear of reverse, racism. And so there was a documentary, 2019 documentary, called "Hello, Privilege." It's Me, Chelsea. And in this documentary, Miss Handler, visited a group of white women out in Orange County, California, and discussed, about their privileges as being white. And so the women, shared their beliefs that people of color receive unearned privileges and unfair advantages in society. And studies show, the reports show, that affirmative action ended up helping women more than any other people group, and particularly white women, than any other people group, in America. And so, but then there was these racist phrases and overtones, like, welfare queen, that got, tagged, to Black women. And so there's a misnomer out there now that um, government assistance helps more Black people, when in fact, it actually helps, more whites. And so even with, the Affordable Care Act, it got dubbed as Obamacare. And so, but studies show that it has helped more white families than it has Black and Hispanic families. So that's one, and so white supremacists, think, that, people of color, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have an unfair advantage, and so they fight against that. And so, two, it stifles innovation. Um, there's a wealth of evidence that indicates now that diversity is beneficial to companies, and it is proven and shown that, when a company has more diversity in its workplace, it actually has a positive impact on the company's bottom line. And so the McKinsey Foundation reports that, racial and ethnic diversity also leads to a greater financial return for those corporations. But, there's a belief among white nationalists, that white supremacists now believe that they should live in a society, by themselves. And so when that happens, you don't have a diversity of thought. You become, stagnated, and you get the same echo that you always hear. And so with this homogeneous, makeup, it becomes, challenging, to be competitive, in the workplace. So we know, that diversity, has a positive impact not only in corporate America, but in our society. It's also, thirdly, it's also ruining our environment. There was a Hopkins report that claimed that, you can't have climate change without sacrifice zones. And so more often than not, the part, that is deemed disposable, or the community that's deemed disposable, are primarily inhabited, by Black and Indigenous people of color. And so environmental racism is defined as this, that is disposable and impacts our community of colors in a very harmful way. And so examples of this is Flint, Michigan water crisis, or the fracking on indigenous land that is harming and impacting our economy as a whole. And finally, it harms, white people, because no one is free until we all are free. And white supremacists is based in the ideology, that the white race, is the superior to all other races and must therefore assert dominance over non-whites. And so these are the ideologies, that do concern me. I hope we don't see this, rise, in Nashville as we're seeing it in other parts of the country. So yeah, those are some ways, that not only hurt people of color, but hurt white people as well. And I know that's probably could be thought of as a little controversial, but no one has to take my word for it. If you just do the research, it shows, that type of ideology is simply not good for America, not good for any people group that exists in America.
All right. I have another question, but I just want to tell the audience, after this one, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions of Reverend Harris directly. I want to ask you a little bit about your voter registration efforts. So the Tennessean has reported this week that the Election Commission is done processing new voter registrations. And we had a 30% increase from 2016 to this year in terms of numbers of registered voters in Davidson County, which I think we all agree is good news. We were among the lowest in the nation, Tennessee was, in terms of voter registrations and voter turnout. So talk to us a little bit about what you did. I know you and Equity Alliance and several other groups were working on voter registrations, as were we. So what do you feel like, in a non-political way, just in terms of logistics, what made this more successful this year, the numbers of voter registrations, and how do you follow through and make sure these people are actually going to the polls, these new voters?
So one thing that we did differently is we changed our messaging. We used a messaging that helped people understand what's truly in it for them. What's in it now what's in it now for Big Mama, and what's in it now for their little cousins, and what's in it for their sisters and their brothers. How does this impact your grandmother's Medicare and Medicaid? So we tried to bring the messaging home, in a way, that they could understand my vote counts, rather than the old messaging of, people fought long and hard and died, in order for that you can have the right, to vote. That's true, but that is not what young people really, I think, wanted to hear. And so we tried to use real live examples that resonated with them. That's for one thing. And then secondly, we tried to give factual information on how their votes matter, and how they can engage and what's at stake. And so we did everything. For every time we do a meal and mask, we had made available an opportunity for people to register to vote. So we had over 500 people that we got registered to vote with 100% accuracy. And so every event that we've done, we've asked people if they were registered voters. If individuals had or coming out of prison, we showed them the process of how to restore their rights to vote. So we were just been very intentional in making sure that we reach the masses as much as possible. Students who are turning 18 years of age. Before the pandemic, we were going into schools during lunchtime and making sure that kids understood the power of the vote. So we're getting out, being amongst the people, radio ads, as well as social media campaign, but actually, asking everyone to take responsibility to at least, touch 5 people about the importance to vote and making a plan to vote. And now we are gearing up. Now we're making sure that things are in place to get people out to vote. So we're asking our churches to unleash the vans. People need rides to the polls. We're asking neighbors to take a friend, take a neighbor to the poll if that is the case. And we're doing things, if you're hungry, don't get out of line. We'll be there with some food, water, what it takes, stay in line. You need a Band-Aid, I got a Band-Aid too. Do not get out of line. Hang in there and get that vote counted.
Clifton, it's obviously working. The numbers in Bordeaux were the highest of the early voting sites in the city. And Bordeaux usually is at the lower end. The problem that we both have in both our communities is the under 30 vote. We just got to get those young people out there.
And we have targeted this year, we have targeted Black males. We needed more Black males to vote. And so this is all a part of our civic engagement department, which is the department that I have the least amount of funding for. But nonetheless, I think the staff has done a yeoman's job of making sure that we are touching the communities, touching the masses, working in partnership with other organizations, because this is not about any big eyes. This is about us. This is about our beloved community. So I'm a firm believer. There's no telling how much God can accomplish, provided it doesn't matter who gets the credit. Now is not the time and all to seek credit. Now is the time and all to get the message out and to get people to register to vote. Registration is over. Now it's time to vote. So that's the message.
We have someone on our call who designed a voter registration and engagement program at one of our local synagogues called "Not Voting is Not Kosher," and it was really aimed at the at younger people, the way that you and Avi are discussing. So hopefully, and Deborah has also done a couple of programs with young voters. She's found that if you've never voted before, even looking at the ballot and processing what all you're supposed to do and who all your representatives are and things like that is challenging. So we've been doing some outreach just along those lines as well. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask? Go ahead, Avi.
Clifton, I heard this week that from people that know a lot more than me for sure, that one of the best ways to lower incarceration is to make sure that people have an affordable home that they own. That home ownership, building equity for a future, is probably the best tool to keep people from wandering in the wrong places. And I'm encouraged by the president saying that he wants to install a program that gives first-time homeowners a $15,000 contribution to their purchase. And I'm just wondering where you see affordable housing fit into that narrative. And our Jewish community could do a lot more in that arena than we are doing. And I'm wondering what you think we could lend help with.
All of our communities can do a lot more in that arena than we are doing. Avi, know that having housing, safe, decent, affordable housing is the environment in which young people can thrive, right? It's hard to teach a child to read when they're having to bounce from house to house to house because mom and dad keeps getting evicted from house to house. It's when you have that kind of pressure on you, your ability, to be creative gets stifled. Your health is not the same if you don't have, if you are a diabetic and you need insulin, right? Where are you going to keep it if you don't have a house to keep it in? But we have to make housing affordable. And in order now to make housing affordable, that cannot be done by subsidizing our way out of the problem. We can't do that. We have got to increase the wages and allow people, to earn a livable way so that they can begin to build wealth. Wealth was built, traditionally, through housing. Right now, um, home ownership in the African American, communities is lower than it was 50 years ago. We're losing ground. And one of the ways to amass, wealth is through affordable housing. And so I would say, that if people had good, decent housing, they have not only a place to go, but they have a place to thrive, a place to lay their head, a place. I mean, one of the things that I'm enjoying about the pandemic, I get to enjoy the house that I'm paying for a change. Because before, the garage, I drive out, I go to work, I'm at work all day. Garage goes up, I come in, I eat, I go to bed. But now I actually get to enjoy my home. I mean, I've done a few little home remodeling projects and stuff. And so I would say, Avi, the answer to your question is yeah, I think it would certainly impact the family in a very positive way if people had access to housing, but it has to be access that is not cost burdensome to them.
Right. If you're looking for some projects, come on over here, Clifton. I've got a few.
Hey, look, one of my staff members was looking for someone to do some carpentry work and some sheetrock and some tile and flooring. And I said, well, I don't know anybody. And she said, well, I'm surprised you don't know anybody. Well, I don't, because I do all that myself, but I'm not putting myself out for hire. Yeah, that was a former life, Avi. I used to be a general contractor as well.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Didn't know that.
And all my folks back home in North Carolina are contractors.
Wow.
Other questions from the audience? If not,
Now,
while we're waiting, can you talk to us a little bit about, are you involved at all with the mural that's going in East Nashville this weekend?
From afar. They asked me, for some resource support, and it was my pleasure, to do that, So, and I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see it. It got approved, and I'm glad to see it's happening.
Yes, me too. I'm a little worried because the Women's March was also planning something that day, and I think their programming overlaps, but I think the Women's March is going to go over and join the mural program at the end of the Women's March. So
right now, I'm just praying there's safety, because there has been some threats made, so yeah. But this weekend, I'm doing something totally non-work related. I'm actually going to Shelbyville to a pear orchard, pick some pears, and my wife and I are going to try our hand at making pear preserves.
Huh.
good for you.
Leslie, just a comment to Clifton. Clifton, the history of the Urban League is steeped in its relationship with Jewish people. And we talked about that past relationship. I know in Chicago, where my older sister was involved, she was deeply involved with Edmund Berry, who was at the time the head of the Urban League. How do we intentionally go about repairing the frayed relationship that has occurred over the years, and going back to that time where we linked hand in hand in these fights how do we intentionally, can we bring our Urban League community and our Jewish community really closer together in shared vision?
Yeah, and Avi, we can do that, as of today, I will commit, to making sure, that the Jewish community, has a seat on our board of directors and stuff.
Great.
Our founders of this Urban League, there was Jewish, our incorporating founders, some of them were Jewish, so I make that pledge, to today.
Great.
Wonderful.
That's one way to be intentional.
That's right. That would be wonderful.
And then as Clifton said, he's already registered to watch the Shared Legacies movie, and I hope many others will join him in watching that. And then I will commit to working with Clifton to see if we could arrange some conversations, but specifically with Urban League members, to talk about the film after and how we could actually really make those recommit to that in the way that Clifton just suggested.
And Clifton, I'll send you the missive that we use to inform our community, or at least one part of our community, about the film. You could feel free to use it and send out to your, that would be great.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
Go ahead.
Clifton, a question actually about, and it relates to the movie, an obvious question. In my past experience in other communities, so it's other communities of engaging with younger adult African Americans, what I found was those shared memories have little to no resonance to them whatsoever.
Mhm.
That even the legacy of Martin Luther King for 20-some-year-olds is so historical that it is historical. And I noticed this, and I'm not saying this to be political, but I noticed that during the Democratic primaries, you had Bernie Sanders talk much about that history, his history, and yet you noticed that it just kind of fell on deafness. Because I think a lot of them are like, well, that's great, but I wasn't, that's so long ago that I wasn't born, and it has no meaning to me. Do you find from the young adults that you talk to today, let's say 35 years old and younger, that when you reference, or when King is referenced, or even Jesse Jackson, maybe for that matter, that they just look at you as like, that's great, but that's a history lesson, and it doesn't really apply to me today?
That's a great question, Adam. And the answer to your question is yes. When I talk to people who are 45 and older about the Urban League, 9 times out of 10, they've heard about the Urban League. If I talk to someone younger than that, they look at me, like a deer caught in the headlights. Who? What do you do? And I think, that for a lot of our young people, I find that they've had no struggle. And because there's not been a real struggle, there's no real connection.
Do you think, just to butt in on that, do you think that the unfortunate things that we've seen, that younger Black men have experienced overtly experienced the last 4 or 5 months, that we've seen on television, do you think that's changing their attitude to that struggle?
Most definitely. Riots are nothing new. If you go back and look at the riots and all that destroyed towns and all, Black populations and all in Kansas City, Black Wall Street, um, I don't subscribe to violence, but peaceful protests. My grandmother always told me a shut mouth never gets fed. So I see more and more young people as a result of the senseless murder of George Floyd rise up, and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. I mean, a young lady, in her bed, asleep, And so this is resonating with young people. And now, it is, I think, up to organizations like the Urban League to turn that energy into something positive. I mean, I give the young people a lot of credit, for the zeal and the stamina, but they have no strategy. And so, it is, the Urban League has been fighting this fight for a long time. And so even right now, I mean, I have been working with economists looking at our city's budget. It is blowing my mind, at the things that are not being talked about, the things that are not being revealed. And so, but we got to find a way now to engage young people around issues that matter to them, issues that will impact them. We got to talk about employment in a way, that like right now, renewable energies, we should be back in the classroom at the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, talking to kids and all about jobs that will be coming online by the time they get out of high school and graduate college. And we got to make the connectivity. So yeah, I just think, that we got to find a way, to get in it, with them. But to your observation, I would say, more and more young people are getting woke, as they say. But it's one thing, to be woke, but it's another thing to be engaged in woke.
The other thing I want to mention, this is for Leslie and Deborah, really. Other CRC, other community relations committees sometimes have ex officio honorary members as standing members that are, very specific. So in another community I know of, they had a person who was, not Jewish, but involved at the university in their Middle Eastern Studies program. And he had a standing chair at the CRC meetings as a way of tying them together, not on an irregular basis, but on a very regular basis. I don't know if that's something that's something to think about with someone like Clifton, or maybe someone who represents the Urban League who maybe is a little younger to create that linkage. But I know it's been done in other communities, just like Clifton just made his offer in terms of, us being involved in the Urban League. So
that is something that we've talked about, and we can certainly talk with Clifton after about what that might look like. It's usually done in communities that have bigger populations, Jewish populations than we do, but it is something that we've been talking about, not just with the Urban League, but with other groups as well. So we'll pursue that in the future.
And keep in mind, everything that I've said, is my opinion, and
that's true of us too.
And everybody knows how I feel about opinions. Opinions like belly buttons. Everybody got one. But I've had some experiences, and I'm telling my young people now, been there, done that. You don't have to do the same stuff that I've done. So for what it's worth, let me give you the benefit of my counsel, even though you didn't ask for it. And I'm remembering, lessons that I've learned or heard and learned at a much earlier age, and I'm finding those things to be true now. So I think, that if we engage with our young people, we put it out there, we help them navigate, one day the light bulb will come on.
I hope so. When I try that with my kids, I usually get an eye roll, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about needs. So a large number of our Jewish community has been focused recently on allyship and being better allies. We're doing a community read of the How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. And so are there things that the Urban League needs? Are there ways that we could be better allies to you right now?
Sure. We need voice. We need influence. We need folks that will yoke up, with us, on initiatives around, health, around around economic development, around education. I mean, right now, kids are trying to learn through a digital medium, but yet they don't know how to use it, and the kids don't know how to use it. I mean, the parents don't know how to use it. So education is somewhat different. And so and it, so yeah, so those are ways and all that we could use some help. I tell people, especially my staff, build a relationship. Everything is not about money. Build a relationship. If you build a relationship correctly, you build it right with intentionality, resources will come from some of the strangest places, but right now, I can only be at one place at one time. And so if I'm over here dealing with a healthcare issue, I don't have anyone over here dealing with the housing issue. And Avi can tell you that. I mean, I know Avi would like to see me more in his meetings, but there's only one me. I can only be so many places. But if I had people in partnership to help with voice, to help with engagement, that would be phenomenal.
Great.
Great. We will certainly work on that. Are there any final questions? We're almost at 1 o'clock. I want to be mindful of people's time, but we have time for one last question or two if anybody has.
Lots of applause to Clifton.
Definitely.
I'll go ahead and give some, oh, I'm sorry, Clifton, go right ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I have one question.
Please.
And is, what do you hope will come from this? And that's for anybody.
From this call, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll jump in. I hope that we actually are able to follow through with some specific programming. So one area where I think we've struggled is actually being in the room together, doing things together. So I think having an opportunity to have real dialogues across our communities would be a very big positive. And so I hope that comes out of this.
And you were, what you were mentioning before about building relationships is the bedrock of community relations work. It is what we do every day and what we continue to do even in this virtual world. There's also been some concern in our community from some members of our community related to the Black Lives Matter movement. And my hope for this was for people to have the opportunity to hear from leaders of the Black community and to realize that that does not have to be such a frightening idea. The idea of working with the Black community for these issues, economic issues, justice issues, social justice issues, does not have to be frightening. We can do it in partnership and by building these kinds of relationships.
Yeah, and that's hopefully a time for another conversation to pack that, because at the end of the day, Black Lives Matter is a phrase.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Exactly. We
Right.
keep telling people that, but
Yeah, Clifton, what I'd add is that
what that phrase is birthed out of. And then if you can understand what it is birthed out of, then you can have dialogue, why it is resonating with so many people of color, and then why it is causing so much stir, across America. But that's another conversation.
Yes, this is the
We'll bring you
start
back.
of the right.
Clifton, what I would add to what everyone has said is, I think Adam's right. One of the biggest regrets is that we have lost that close continued relationship, and we've each kept our own passion, but we don't do that work together. And Adam's right. Our young people do not know that history, and even our older generations have forgotten that history. And we need to celebrate that history and start anew. And I'm hoping that the Urban League and the Jewish Federation would be a classic example for others in moving that back to where it was.
If I can just make one comment, though, about the young people. The young people may not know that particular history of the civil rights movement, but they know they are currently very engaged together in working on the issues that Black Lives Matter has brought to the fore. So while they may not know the history of it, they are out on the front lines together, white and Black young people together, working for these issues of racial justice. And they really, the white young people that I know are fully committed, and whether they maybe know the history or not, they're out there on the front lines. And so while I think it is important for us to respect and celebrate the history, there's a lot of work happening every day between young people of all different colors working together on these issues.
And let me just say along those lines that I think that although the history is there, it's really what you do today that counts. You can't rest your laurels on what happened 50, 60 years ago. The challenge is stepping up to the challenge of today.
Mm-hmm. So, and I just have to give one more plug. I do this all the time to David Halberstam's book, The Children, because it is the history of the Nashville civil rights movement from the time of John Lewis and the Woolworth lunch counter, but it is literally as relevant today as it was then. I am rereading this book, and almost word for word, what David Halberstam talks about from that era is as true today as it was then. And it's a really good reminder for all of us.
Some of those individuals live in our community.
That's right.
And one of them happened to be one of my church members and stuff, and all. And I'm just in awe when I get to sit in front of him and hear him talk about that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Who's there? Who is there?
A gentleman by the name of Mr. Hillman.
It's a book full of heroes.
Yeah.
Unless there's other questions, Leslie, I'll go ahead and give quick announcements so we can be respectful of time.
Sure, go ahead.
So first of all, again, many thanks, Clifton. And as has been discussed, we see this as the beginning, not the end. It was a wonderful first conversation. There's lots of work for us to be doing together, and so we will continue in those efforts. Next week's Lunch and Learn guest will be Dr. Chris Williamson. He is a member of the Williamson County Task Force that was tasked with looking at the Williamson County seal, which many of you have probably read in the newspaper, contained a Confederate flag. And he'll be here next week to share about the experience of the task force, what their recommendations were about the seal, and what he hopes to see moving forward in Williamson County. Also, we have the Suzanne Nozzle Dare to Speak Free Speech virtual event on Monday, October the 26th. I put the registration link in the chat room. If anybody needs it, please let me know. But that program will be facilitated by Fabian Bedney, and it will include an opportunity for some small group conversations, and the author, Suzanne Nozzle, will rotate between the small groups to answer questions related to free speech. I think those are the two. So those are the two, Lunch and Learn and Dare to Speak.
And the film festival movies.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we have the first, thank you. We have two film festival movies. The first is called They Ain't Ready for Me, the story of an African-American Jewish mother in Detroit, I believe. That's from October 19th to 21st. And then Shared Legacies, which we've mentioned, the link for that will be open from October 29th to 31st.
Great, thank you, Deborah.
And tell my pastor, Chris Williamson, to make sure he tells the fuller story.
Excellent.
Oh, we will. We definitely will. But
sure.
Thank you for that reminder, but we definitely will.
Thank you, Clifton, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Glad you're able to find some, what we call in our house, pandemic positives. We've been trying to focus on good things that have come out of all this. So I'm glad you're enjoying your house. And I hope you have a great time at the orchard this weekend. And I really look forward to working with you on some future programming. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much, Clifton.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next week.